Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. At Leaders Speak, we are trying to understand the leader's journey. What are the hurdles they have faced and how they're trying to overcome? And today we have a special guest with us, Magda Lilia Chelli. She is a senior cybersecurity expert leading cyber advisory for Marsh Asia. Magda is a keynote speaker and an entrepreneur. She held several CISO roles. She's a strong activist for women in security. She founded Women on Cyber with its chapter in Singapore, supporting female professionals in the industry. She was a member of advisory board for the Executive Summit at Black Hat Asia. Thank you so much, Magda, for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you and speak to you.
Hi, Vandana. It's my pleasure. It's so exciting to have this opportunity to discuss with you. And thank you so much for this wonderful introduction.
Thank you so much. Now, I'll start off with understanding that how exactly your different CISO roles have spanned. I know you've been a CISO, you've been an entrepreneur, you have been a virtual CISO. So, what these roles are, and especially this virtual CISO, this word actually is very fascinating. So, I want to know more about it.
I have started from my very early career around a little bit of security, mostly IT, CRM. And that was something that, to be honest, wasn't my main passion. I was looking for something more. And while I was discovering a little bit of everything, I started to understand where my strengths are or where, and my strengths were around cybersecurity, but that came much, much further around the journey. Now, what happened following different roles in my career, and especially across various countries, I lived actually in 5 countries, that helped me to understand not only the different cultures, but as well the business environments, the priorities for different companies. And that was a very important part or aspect in me taking leadership positions in the cybersecurity space and industry. So my first CISO role, I would say, was a little bit of a luck. Someone really trusted me and gave me that opportunity. And it is very important because at the same time, you need that person who's going to push you into taking that role within the first time, right? No one is born a CISO. No one is, a CISO immediately after graduation. You need to get that opportunity. I wasn't at that time an official virtual CISO. I was literally a CISO working with a company, helping them to build a cybersecurity strategy. And I would say it was really a very speed and fast learning curve. I have a few, learning points that I would advise, and I'm happy to share them afterwards around that particular experience, which was my first experience as a CISO. And also, definitely, I have some, good points about what not to do when you are a CISO, newly appointed, trying to change the word and secure a company.
That's a good point. That like we should learn what are the things that we shouldn't do. Then it'll help us in getting things in shape. So, how exactly your daily function looks like as a CISO?
Well, I would say, first of all, let me just take a step back. When I started my journey, my CISO role was mainly onto more focusing on the operation and taking into literally the practical approach or aspect, implementing security best practices and everything that is possible to secure again the company. That, of course, meant that my daily tasks and my days were very heavy, very busy, where I needed to be involved in every single thing almost across that company. And in that particular case, it was something that was achievable because the company was a small and medium-sized enterprise. It wasn't a big organization. However, by doing that, I realized as well that I missed the point of the priority of CISO, which is not securing everything because that's not possible, but helping and enabling the business to continue its activities in the most or the best optimal secure way, mitigating the risk, but not trying to address them all because that wasn't an option at all. And it wasn't a possible achievable goal, especially if you're just starting to build a team within a company. So I'd say my first days with the first experience were very busy, were a little bit more hectic between different teams, trying to discuss with the different business stakeholders, helping them to understand why certain initiatives were really important, battling as well around some of the very common conflict of interest when it comes to deploy something or a new technology, while in practice, I will come and say, no, we need to add additional layers, additional steps before we will be able to roll out that particular solution. Now that changed pretty quickly because I realized that, of course, again, my CISO role wasn't about addressing every single thing, it was about building the right strategy for the business to enable them to manage cyber risk. And that came only afterwards, after I understood a little bit further. And I got into these mistakes that I mentioned, like trying to fix everything, and trying to secure everything. That didn't really work. Now, when it comes to later stages in my career and how those days looked like, basically they were mostly focusing on ensuring that I had a very clear vision and roadmap, that I had regular communication with my business stakeholders and build that communication as an enabler for the security rather than, the policeman, which is sometimes or often perceived in organizations. That was very critical. Practically, what did it mean? It meant regular, again, meetings and catch up with the business stakeholders where I explained my strategy, I explained my vision. On the other side, of course, that was part of the governance, that was part of the strategy. But on this other side, it required as well me being involved into the operations, having a clear visibility and leading the operational teams into implementing the right things. As an example, vulnerability management and patch management was something that I was overlooking and very clearly not only being involved in that, not on the practical implementation, but onto the supervision of it, but as well into an advisory role. And what do I mean by advisory? I have realized as well with my particular second experience as a CISO that while I would help and support the colleagues to understand the vision and strategy, eventually share with them the standards, the changes in our processes and policies, they still needed support around very practical and operational things. So coming back to my example about patch management and vulnerability management, as a CISO, you might supervise that, and then you require from your teams to fix the findings and address those findings accordingly to your timeline. Now, what I think we sometimes miss as leaders in the cybersecurity space is, again, the fact that the teams might require your support and in the recommendations of fixes. So I very often ended up working with operational teams, including the infrastructure, including network, including even software engineering teams, to help them understand of how to address the findings. That, of course, meant that I needed to prepare myself, learn what they were doing, and help them learn themselves about how to help me. So there was a lot of collaboration and there was a lot of involvement into multidisciplinary learning, not only from cybersecurity, but trying to help those colleagues. That's from the operational point of view. And the last point where I was not literally daily tasks, but very important tasks were related to the reporting to the decision makers, the business stakeholders that had a say around the business, that had a say about their risk approach and why and how they would accept or not certain cyber risk. And in this particular case, it was as well a learning journey because while you might perceive a cyber risk as critical or high as a cybersecurity professional, that might be perceived differently from a business stakeholder. And therefore, at that particular time, I needed to address on regular basis the business stakeholders like CIOs, CEOs, or eventually boards, explaining to them the different cyber risks for the business. I learned from that as well, very much around focusing on the right information rather than focusing on the technical aspect of cybersecurity, focusing on the cyber risk and clearly showing challenges and results or solutions that we are going to need to implement with eventually a return on investment for the organization. So when we look at the CISO role and the various experiences that I had, I consider myself learning every single time and gaining that advantage that I could speak and communicate and collaborate with different business stakeholders. So in none of the cases I am discussing at this time really technical cybersecurity, because that with them, when I look at all the experiences, wasn't the priority. The priority was always the collaboration with the different business units, with the different colleagues, in order to make the strategy successful. And now I consider, after taking a few roles as a CISO, BISO, you know, we have the new term as well, BISO, that is becoming very popular, Business Information Security Officer, which I held as well, which was mostly a CISO role, to be honest. I understand that different organizations have different implementations of those roles and titles. Now, what has changed is that I feel that I'm currently very lucky because as a, you know, the practice leader for Marsh, I'm actually taking the hats of different CISO roles for various organizations across different industries. And that means that I will need to adapt on different, not only maturity level of the organizations, but as well on different industries and challenges. We're talking about, for example, a complex environment working with OT and IT in the manufacturing industry that will have very different perspectives and opinions around cyber risk, comparing to, for example, a financial industry with a very heavy regulated requirements, where they might be already not only used, but as well very much adapted to the requirement around cybersecurity and cyber risk in general.
That's interesting to know. And for a new CISO who is just getting started, who has got a role, what are the few advices that you would like to share, some advices that you would like to share so that they can kickstart their journey as a CISO? Because I am sure that when you're saying that from every role, from every piece of activity that you do, there is a learning that you're getting. So for a new CISO, how exactly they can feel confident, yes, now I am ready to be a CISO?
It's a very good question, Vandana. And I think, you know, the extremely important aspect of that as a new starting CISO is to ensure that you have the right business stakeholder support. What does it mean? It means that you need to find your supporter within the business. A CISO will help with the cyber risk management, but if you're unable to communicate with the business and have their support, you will not be able to implement and achieve your vision and strategy. Therefore, the first advice that I give to any newly appointed CISO is ensure that you find the right business stakeholder that will be your supporter, because you will always find or actually face not only resistance, but as well questioning about why we should put a certain amount of budget into cybersecurity. Why should we implement that while we need to go fast and we need to address the business goals first? So having the right message and the right support is critical. This is the first point. The second point that I would like to bring as well is when it comes to a CISO role, it is critical to understand that communication is extremely important. And I started talking about that, but I think as especially newly appointed CISO, it's part of building your brand within the company itself. You need to be perceived as an enabler to the business and not, again, a policeman. And I'm using this word again. If you're enabled to communicate with colleagues across different business units in terms where they understand you are unable to achieve your goals and your strategy. So this is the second point, communication, and ensuring that you are able to address the communication in a way that is understandable by other business stakeholders and not only by cybersecurity professionals. The third point, which I will bring around or for a newly appointed CISO, would be actually to ensure that while you're building your strategy, understand very clearly that you will not be able to fix everything immediately. You might be appointed in a company that has a lower maturity level, and therefore you cannot just go there and say, oh, I'm going to fix everything. That's of course impossible. So have a very clear plan and address your quick wins immediately when possible within the first few months. Because for sure, if you are unable to address your critical and high risks quickly, you might end up with the consequences. And that leads me to the point that is very much related. Ensure as a new CISO that you have a very strong support around the incident response. Because again, you're coming in an organization, might have a different maturity level where you don't have first the capability to fix everything, and you don't have the visibility of everything either. So again, the point here or the conclusion, going to the board, bringing a list of threats, bringing some percentage of vulnerabilities will not help you in your journey as a CISO. Bringing clear visibility about cyber risk with the associated financial losses, eventually building your business case, why this is critical for the business to address, why this requires certain investment in tools, then will help the business to see the value into whatever you're doing in cybersecurity.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Very rightly said that we need to strategize, we need to think broadly. And if we go and try and fix everything, there will things that will fail. So we have to think broadly, and we have to have a board buy-in, and we have to speak their language. It's so much important. And if we start pushing people to follow cybersecurity, it's the way you said it, policemen, we will be just doing the policeman job, but we need to be a contributor. We need to be a visionary who can actually take care of things and contribute in the vision that an organization has to be providing the right services at the right time without failing and being secure. So the data is secure.
Absolutely, Vandana. Indeed.
Thank you so much, Magda, for sharing wonderful insights. It was a pleasure to have you with us here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.